Good morning, friends. Unfortunately, I have a sick kiddo again today, but I am going to make this video for you guys to help you out with your RGB Hex exercise that we have. So the first thing that we're going to go through, I want to make sure that you guys have copied over your decimal to hexadecimal function. This is again coming directly from your base converter program that you guys have. It's a copy paste. Get it in there. You're going to need to convert some decimal numbers to some hexadecimal numbers. The second function that I'm going to write with you guys today, or get you started on at least, is this one called get hex. This is the one where we're going to go through and we're going to be fed a decimal number for red, a decimal number for green, and a decimal number for blue. And our goal is to get back a string that has a hashtag and then the red conversion to hex, the green conversion to hex, and the blue conversion to hex, and we're going to return that to the user. So I'm going to start you guys off. I'm going to do this with the red for you, and then you guys can kind of repeat this process for the green and the blue. The very first thing that we should probably do is we should probably make a variable and say, if you're giving me this decimal number, why don't I feed that decimal number to my decimal to hex converter, and then I will get back some sort of an actual hexadecimal value. So let's make a variable. I'm going to call it something like red hex. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call my decimal to hexadecimal function. I'm going to feed it my red value. Congratulations, I now have my red hexadecimal value. I gave it the decimal. It's giving me back the hexadecimal value. The thing that I wanted to point out with this right now, you guys are going to have to make sure that there's a potential that that digit that you get back is only 1 character long. Remember, our hexadecimal numbers need to be 2 characters long. So this requires just a nice little if statement in a sense when you run through here. What I'm going to test is I'm going to say, hey, this red hex thing, if I find the length of it, and it comes back to just be the length of 1, meaning it's a single character in length, what I need to do is take that variable that I have and I need to change it. In fact, what I need to do is I need to add a 0 first, and then I need to add whatever the digit was that I had back. So for instance, if this came back as the number 9, for example, my hexadecimal value needs to be 0, 9. If it came back with an F, my hex number needs to be 0, F as we jump through there. So when we do this, you guys are then going to repeat this process for all the other numbers as well. So my suggestion, copy paste is awesome. You just have to be careful that you guys are changing the right things. So if I come back here, I'm probably going to make one for my green hexadecimal. I feed it my green number, and then all these red hexes change to green hexes. Same process though. Take my green decimal, convert it to a hexadecimal number, boom. If that thing is only of length 1, add a 0 to it. Guess what? We're going to do the same exact thing for the blue as well. So I'm going to change this over here to say blue hexadecimal. I'm going to give you my blue digit that we had up here, my decimal number, and then we are going to replace all the green hexes with blue hexes. So now when we look at this, the idea is that we at the end where I get to right here, I have 3 hexadecimal numbers. I have a red, green, and blue hexadecimal. So I'm going to go ahead and leave some nice little comments for you guys. Convert red decimal to hexadecimal. I'm going to copy paste because this is just going to be the green decimal. Copy paste, this is just going to be the blue decimal. So now what I have to do is I need to create a string in the form of this. It has to have a hashtag, my 2 red hexadecimals, my 2 greens, and my 2 blues. Well, that's really just me starting my sentence with a hashtag and then concatenating the 3 individual numbers that I have. So I'm going to make a new variable. This is going to be my hex string that we are coming back with. I'm going to start it with a hashtag. I'm going to add my red hexadecimal number, my green hexadecimal number, and my blue hexadecimal number. That is then going to create that sentence. The last thing I need to do is return the string to the user. So this function, although fairly simple, actually does not do a ton. It just takes decimal numbers individually, converts them into hexadecimal, makes them of length 2, and then puts them into a form that looks a lot like this. We give that back to the user. Perfect. Now let's work on this function called show result. This is the one that you're going to have to read the text boxes, feed them to our functions, and get back the things that we need. So if I go through here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, let's create a red decimal number, and we're going to read this from the text box. So I'm going to come down to my red text box. Looks like it has this ID right here. Yours might be different, but we're going to grab the value of it. We're going to repeat that process for all the other letters and numbers, all the other ones as well. So I have a green decimal, I have a blue decimal. This is again me just reading the decimals from the text boxes. Once I have them, I'm going to need to call the function that we have right up here, the getHex function. Sorry, guys. And I'm going to need to feed it the red, green, and blue values that I read from the text box. So I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing that I always like to think about is that this is going to give me something back, so I have to store what it's giving me back. I will again call this something like hex string, because that's what it's giving me back. I'm going to call the function. It is called getHex. I will give it my red decimal first, my green decimal second, and my blue decimal third. This function will then give me back my hexadecimal string. So basically this is like let hex string equal hashtag blah, 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 blah. Perfect. What we can do from here now is we can go ahead and, in a sense, we want to make sure that we do a couple things. We want to change the background color utilizing this variable, but then we also want to create a sentence that says, hey, this RGB in decimal is this in hexadecimal. So let's start with the actual changing of the background. If you guys go back to the calendar, under the description, I actually gave you guys the line of code that you guys are going to need for this. It is right here. And I'll just copy paste this sucker real quickly. Boom. This line of code, we're going to change background color accordingly. Paste that sucker. The only difference is this is going to be the variable that I have to use for my hex string that I have. So we're just saying, hey, go to the background color, change it to be this hashtag RRGGBB. Perfect. Now we need to, in a sense, create an output sentence that has all the pieces of the puzzle that we need. So I'm going to make a variable called output, of course, starting it as an empty string. And what I'm going to do before this is I'm actually going to create the RGB sentence using these variables right here. I'll probably do that actually first before I get to this output sentence itself. So let's do this above this. Create the RGB string to display. This is in the sense of, it's going to say something like RGB, the red decimal, the blue decimal, and the RG, probably green first, and then the blue decimal after that. So we have those numbers, we just have to create the sentence. So I'm going to call this RGB string. Let's go ahead and say, hey, it's going to start with the words RGB. It's going to have a open parentheses, but then the next thing that I'm going to have to do after that is I'm going to have to add in a number. Well, I have a variable called red decimal that I can add in. I then have to add in a comma and a space. Afterwards, the green decimal is going to be there. Add in a comma and a space. I've got my blue decimal coming up last. And then notice after the blue, I just have to end this with a nice little parentheses, closing parentheses at the end of this. So this is, again, just creating a nice variable for me that looks in the form of this, where red, green, and blue are actually decimal numbers. So let's create this output sentence now. My sentence is going to look pretty nice. And then how you format this is up to you. I just really want both the hex string and the RGB string together in the same sentence. So let's go ahead and do this. The conversion of and then let's add this string that we have in here, RGB string. So the conversion of this to hexadecimal is equivalent to, and then we can add in the hex string that we have as well. So we're just creating a very nice little sentence for us. Final thing, we should probably display the sentence. We have a divider that we're going to use for this. So if I come down to my divider, mine just happens to be called ID div. Oops. Maybe yours is called ID div output, something like that. But remember, we're just grabbing the inner HTML of this and saying, can you please put that output sentence inside there? Last thing you need to do to make sure that you have this, you have a button at the bottom that you are converting your RGB. Just make sure that the on click is actually there. Otherwise, it's not going to do anything for you whatsoever. Let's see if I did this first try. If I type in 255, 255, 0. Ooh, look at this. It looks like I do have one error. Let's see what's happening here. Or my background color did not change for me. I type a 0 here. Nothing. Okay, good news. Oh, bad. Ooh. Side note, look at this. So we're going to have to double check my function up here. We should probably test if this is the length of 1, or in the case of 0, it might also be. We would have to add these in there. So I'm going to change these and add in a little bit more on top of this as well. So we're just testing, is it at length 0? Let's see if that changed anything that we have on here. So if I plug in a 0 and a 0 and a 0, I get black. That's perfect. That's what we have is black. 255.00. That should be red, but it looks like I'm running out of some spaces here. Did I miss something? Red, green, blue. Red, green, blue. All right, this is a good old fashioned. Let's check out what these things are. Console.log. I want to see what my red hex is. You guys get to see me problem solving all at the same time. So I'm going to log these things because I'm not sure which one's not showing up. So I'll type in 100, let's do 200, and let's do 255 as well. So it looks like they're all coming back here. It looks like all of them are showing up. I wonder what happens when I put in a 0. Ah, it looks like we're unfortunately not here. So I think we're going to have to change what's happening because those zeros are not working how they're supposed to. So what I'm going to do really quickly, ooh, so it has length of 0 coming out on line 60. So we're going to have to change these up a little bit. That's probably the issue that's going on. So these if statements, we're going to change this to be a while loop probably. So we'll say while the red hex.length is less than 2, then we'll go ahead and add some zeros to it. And I think that what that's going to do for us is that's going to allow us to make sure that if it comes back as a length of 0 or a length of 1, it will do exactly what we need it to. All right, let's see it. 155, 575. Oh, look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get a 0 in there. Life is looking good. All right, you guys have that working. Congratulations.